a bit of demo about what are the capabilities UiPath Apps have to offer, and some of the use cases where it has been used. So we have a bunch of customers who already did POC with us. We have a couple of implementations of live. So we want to talk about some of the use cases where generally it has been used, and more importantly, what's going to come up in the next immediate short time for the next 6 to 8 months. So you get a picture of where we are, what we're going to come, or what is going to come in the next 8 months, plus what are the use cases, plus a quick demo of it. So when we did the survey, or when we had a bunch of questions asked about, we had a couple of questions asked about what do you want to learn out of the session and what's your level of expertise or with UiPath Apps. So we have a wide range of audience, starting from a bunch of folks who mentioned that they're very new to UiPath App. They would like to know about what UiPath App has to offer, to the other end of the spectrum where people have already used it, built a couple of apps, they want to understand some of the deeper functionality. So I'm going to cover from the basics. So for some people, it might be repetitive information, but bear with me for the rest of the audiences. So let's go and start with the slides. So what UiPath Apps in a nutshell. So UiPath Apps is nothing but a industry's first automation-powered low-code app. So what it means is it's a basic web-based designer. Don't confuse it with the studio designer, which we already have, where we build processes. It's a visualization designer where you can drag and drop a bunch of controls and build a visualization layer, which can then interact with your automations. And thereby, it provides a more rich and engaging end-user experiences. So where does UiPath App fit in the automation lifecycle? So we know that we have different pillars in automation lifecycle. We have discover, build, manage, run, and engage. And apps fit in the engage part of it because apps was mainly created with an idea of how users interact with automations. How do you abstract maybe automations, and how do you provide a meaningful way for the users to interact with automation? So that's where app platform lies in. It's a way for users to engage with automation. So that's the nutshell of what UiPath Apps is. And what does UiPath Apps have to offer? So it has basically two main components to it. One is the App Studio, through which an app creator, in this case, it can be an RPA developer, which like most of you are, or it can be a business user who's going to ultimately use the app runtime. So a citizen developer or a business expert who goes ahead and builds the end user experience of what are the controls which needs to be displayed in the app, which are the sections which needs to be displayed, and all those happens. The creation experience of that happens through App Studio, and this is where you create an app. And again, not to be confused with the UiPath Studio, where you build your processes in the desktop application. Then the end user experiences. So the end user experience is anyone who consumes the experience, or it's called the runtime experience of it, right? It can be it can be all the business user in your organization. So if you have created an app called HR onboarding, so then it's an app which will be used by all the HR executives in organizations. Or if you're building a contact center application, it's going to be used by all the agents in your call center or your contact center. So they become the end user experiences. So these are the two main components of it. And the end user experience is both web and mobile friendly. So how UiPath Apps is unique? UiPath App is a new way, and yet another way, or yet another meaningful way for users to interact with automations. So today, there are fundamentally two ways, or I would say three ways through which a user interacts with automation. So you have an unattended automation. You have a robot tray which comes on the right. It's in your desktop taskbar. You click on it and you run an automation. If it has any user input, probably you would have had forms within it. And then another way is for users to go ahead and act on actions using the action center, which is basically the long running workflows. And however, UiPath App provides you a visually rich interactive interface through which you can interact your automations. And it's very similar to a canvas or a single pane of glass, I might say, where you want to pull in information from different systems like an ERP, CRM, legacy, and other existing applications and bring it in one place. So more often than not, in many of the scenarios which we have, either seen as proof of concepts or in live, one of the main problems which many organizations faces today, either in a contact center or in a typical day-to-day work, user has to jump between 3 to 4 different systems to take similar data or data related to a specific information. For example, let's say a customer calls in for to check the order status. You may have to verify the customer in a customer system, maybe a CRM. Then you might have to check the status of the order in a logistic systems, or you might have to go to a third-party tool, which goes ahead and finds the ticketing number or the shipment number and whatnot. So in a typical call center, the agent has to swap between multiple tabs in the system, and most of the time for the agent is spent in either entering information into different systems or searching at different parts of the screens trying to fetch the right information. So how UiPath app makes it unique or makes it different is we provide you a custom visualization layer where as an organization, you can go ahead and build a custom UI just by drag and drop specifically for your need, pull in all the relevant information, which the use case demands, not that the entire CRM system information or everything about the customer, and let the robot do the job of extracting the information from different systems and bringing it to one single screen rather than the user going and jumping between different screens, spending time in entering information in different system or extracting information in different system rather than spending more time interacting with the customers. So that is the value proposition which UiPath has to offer. And the other important information is one of the meaningful ways for the users to interact with automation. So like the way you interact with your Outlook, your Slack, your Salesforce, or ERP systems, uh, a business user and at the end of the day would find it more seamless to interact with a web application rather than a robot tray, which kickstarts a process. So we wanted to give a very immersive experience to the user and abstract the automation from the experiences which the user goes through. So that's the idea behind UiPath Apps in a nutshell. And UiPath Apps has the ability to connect to single or multiple automations at the same time, connect to attended or unattended automations at the same time. So you can have multiple processes connected from a single app, which can be called at various instances based on user action, or can be called sequentially. At the same time, it can be an attended robot which runs in your desktop, or it can be an unattended robot where you want to update a system, which you have the ability to call both attended and unattended jobs from the apps. So when do we use app? I covered part of it, but let me go through some of the other key highlights here. When you want to provide a very standardized experience for running an automation rather than a robot tray, and ability for you to access between multiple devices. So you have the ability to access apps from mobile. And if you want to bring information from different systems, and it gives a 360-degree view of your customer, of your employee, where by the nature your systems are distributed or have sources at different systems. And the other important aspect of this is, since it's low code and no code, and it is a drag and drop, it helps RPA developers to collaborate with business users in a much more seemingly interesting way. For example, a business user might have an idea of what the end app or the user interface has to look like, and the business user can just log in into app platform and create a visualization layer, and then RPA developer can use it as the framework to go ahead and build the process and binds the UX layer which the business user has built. So it kind of helps you with the collaborations. And lastly, as I said earlier, the ability to leverage unattended automations. So it helps specifically in field service professionals where you have an Android phone or iOS phone, doesn't matter, as long as you can call an unattended job from your phone. Yeah, so So you have attended and unattended automation with apps. So I've highlighted some of the scenarios here where if you have the apps run in a mobile device, or you don't want the users of an app to have access to the applications or data that is leveraged in the automation, you would generally use an unattended robot in that case, scenario, and specifically also in the cases where you want to do a fire and forget, which means you want to start a job, but you're not waiting for a result. It goes and updates any other backend system, and you want to move to the next. And that are the typical cases for using an unattended scenario, because you're not waiting for the data to come back. In that case, you would rather use attended robot, because in unattended, you don't have a deterministic way of determining when the process gets going to get over and when you're going to get the results. You can use it, but it's generally there's no deterministic way for you to do it. And then in unattended, typical scenario is either any employee who works at this job. It may be a banker in an organization. It may be an HR, or it can be an operations person or a contact center person who have an attended robot installed in their machine, and they have the ability to they have access to the applications they have in their machine, and they want to access different processes. That's the scenario where you can use attended. And you also have the ability to use the combination of both in scenarios where you want to aggregate data from different systems. At the same time, you want to do a lot of real-time activities when you're interacting with a customer, let's say in a contact center. There where you would use attended automation. And once it's complete, you want to go ahead and update a bunch of backend systems. It doesn't have to be real time. And that in those scenarios, you can use unattended. So it's a combination of attended and unattended, which can be used. And we have seen such scenarios being used in a contact center use cases. So these are the different some of the examples of the use cases which has been used in different industries. So one consistent use case which you have seen everywhere is the contact center, where we have seen on an average, a contact center agent has 6 to 7 tabs of different applications opened in the systems, and they have to navigate between different applications. And we also seen a lot of interest from customers on this side, where they want the ability to bring all the information in one place, so that the agents don't spend time in looking at different systems. That's number one. And one of the other greater benefits is you avoid a deep learning curve for the new agents or onboarding. So you have very specific screens with specific information, which is shown to you in an app, in a UiPath app, rather than learning 5 different proprietary internal systems or other applications such as CRM. So this helps both in terms of employee productivity, employee onboarding in terms of agents in an organization, as well as it at the end of the day helps with a better average handling time, in turn, which makes your customers happy. Then there are instances of any use cases which involves field service professionals who are out of the system. They can out of their offices, they are in the sites. That's another use case of where we can use mobile apps or apps for that matter. Then we have seen use cases where it is used in patient scheduling, and more importantly, in cases where either for legal reasons or for or other reasons, where you have to update the same information in multiple systems. More often than not, this is a occurrence in many different organizations. So that is a place where as a human, or as a doctor, or as an agent, or as a HR in an organization, you don't have to go ahead and sit and do those manual entries in different system. You do it in one system through apps, and then the robots in the backend or your attended robots take care of it. So these are some of the areas where we have seen the use cases are being used. At the same time, this is a platform. This is just a sample. It can be used in wide variety of scenarios. So we have seen use cases where people have used apps as a companion app rather than a main app. So they have they know that the main app is in their system is going to take 75% of the of the screen, whereas they want UiPath apps to be more of a companion app, pulling in relevant information when the agent needs. They use it as a sidebar rather than a full-fledged app. So UiPath app has the flexibility to behave the way you want. So I will show all of that in demo, but I'm just giving a glimpse of what the apps has to offer. Okay, great. So now let's get into the demo. Before that, I think there are two questions in chat. Let me quickly look into it. So can UiPath apps consume data directly from UiPath data service? At the moment, I can see we can bring the data only with the user bots. Yeah, that's right. At the moment, yes. If you want to interact with data service, you do it with the bots, but there is an active work going on with the product engineering team where they're building an direct integration with the entities. So similar to the way you add processes to the app, you will have the ability to add entities and perform operations directly with the entities. So that is something which is in the pipeline, and it'll be available soon. Then can apps be integrated with third-party application directly through API? At the moment, no. All the heavy lifting happens through the bots, and we are going to introduce the entity integration. And there are two, we have a long-term goal to enable this capability, but in the short term, your heavy lifting is going to happen through bots, and we'll have integration with entities. Do UiPath apps directly interact with UiPath Assistant or through Orchestrator? So UiPath apps interact with UiPath Assistant and with Orchestrator. So in case of attended automation, where the process lies in your local machine, UiPath apps uses robot.js and calls the robot in your local machine and runs the robot without calling orchestrator. So it does nothing to do with orchestrator. Whereas if you have configured UiPath app to start a process in an unattended fashion, that process, UiPath app sends the call to orchestrator. So UiPath apps act in both fashions, but in case of attended scenarios, it doesn't go to orchestrator, it directly connects with the robot in your machine. Can apps handle files as input to UiPath robots? So today there is no direct way to do it, but you have the ability to, as soon as the user, you can have a button in the app. When the user clicks on it, you can start a process, an attended process, which calls a select file activity in your apps. And from there, you can pick your file, and that will be the first step in your attended automation process. And then from there, you can continue with the process. There is a work item plan to have a very designated control called file control, through which you'll be able to upload and download files from apps from various data sources. It can be a process argument, orchestrator, storage bucket, or entities. But again, this is in the roadmap. It'll be available soon. So I think we have a lot of questions coming in, and most of them might be answered once I finish the demo and the rest of the slides. So let me do that. Let me continue with the demo right now, and I'll go through the rest of the content which I want to present. Then most of the questions probably might be answered at the end. If not, I will go through each one of them and I'll get you the answers. Great. So now let's move on to the demo part of it. So I have logged into cloud.uipath.com. So most of you might be aware, but in case if not, so apps, you log into cloud.uipath.com, whether it's a community or an enterprise account, you will have apps available on the left navigation here as one of the services. And apps today is a cloud only service, which means that you create apps in cloud, you run the apps in cloud. However, apps has the ability to connect both to an on-premise orchestrator or the cloud orchestrator. So you might have your orchestrator on-prem. You can still connect your apps from the cloud to your orchestrator on-prem. So now let's start with this. So you have the app landing page. You click on apps, you get to the app landing page where you get to see the list of the apps. And you have various permissions here. So you can be a owner of an app, which means you have created an app. You can be a co-owner of an app where you have the ability to edit in addition to the owner. So you have the ability to edit an app, whether if only if you're an owner or a co-owner. Then you can be an user of an app where you have the ability only to run an app. And finally, you have a public. Public is also very similar to user. You have the ability to only run an app, but in user, you generally give permission to that specific user. By making an app public, I generally make sure that everyone who has access to cloud.uipath.com can access or run this app. So that's a quick overview of what the different permissions are. Then let's come to the right side here. So this is a quick tutorial for you to go ahead and learn what UiPath app is. And we have also some documentation here, which can takes you to docs.uipath.com if you have time to go ahead and read it. And most importantly, we have released an academic course. Vibor has already shared the link in the registration page, but we will share that information once again. It's a good course for which helps you to ramp up quickly with what UiPath Apps is and what it has to offer with a good example where you can build an app by yourself and work on it. So moving on. So let me go ahead and start by showing your runtime experiences of one or two apps. Then I will go about building a new app for you and show you what are the various components associated with apps. So let me start with an UiPath Banker app. So I click on this play and it runs this, it opens in a new tab where the app runs in. And let's say that a bank call comes in. I accept a call. I'm an agent sitting in a contact center. I accept a call, and as soon as the call gets accepted, I get the UiPath assistant runs in the background and pulls in information about that specific customer from different systems. So in this case, you could see that the product and services information is fetched from, let's say, from the ERP system, the offers come from the marketing system, the recommended actions come from the AI engine, and you can have the case history, the past tickets which come from the CRM system, or your service now for that matter. So you don't have to, it's as a simple thing here, you see all the information which the customer needs, or the agent needs is presented to the agent in a much more meaningful way. After the agent authenticates the customer, the information is being pulled from the system one by one and starts lighting up the screen. You could see a lot of information available here. So let's say in this case, the user needs to do a recommended action, or I wants to do an inquiry about the card transaction. So you click on inquiry and then it pulls up all the relevant, another process runs. You can pull in all the relevant information about the particular account and the last transactions here. You could see that it's slightly slow because Zoom generally hogs a lot of memory. So whenever there is Zoom running, the app tends to get a bit slow. So now you see here that 30 days, this is a balance. I'm going to increase it to 60 days. It brings up other set of data. Then I can click on any one single record, which pulls up the information about that particular record. And I also have the ability to reverse a transaction. And once that is done, I click on done. Then I realized during the conversation with the customer, I realized that this is it's a good opportunity for us to sell the Visa, newly launched Visa card, which has got greater reward benefits. So I click on the new rewards Visa and the customer seems interested in it. So I get all the details about the customer in this specific form. And I click on submit. Then it opens up a disclaimer where I'm by law mandated to read this to the customer. And once I've read this and click on done, this information can be a backend job which has been sent to other system, maybe your CRM system or a different opportunity or lead tracking system or whatever may be, that you have the ability to use both attended and unattended automations in a seamless fashion. So as you could see here, I have one screen here as is for a demo purpose where I have a main screen and I have multiple Small screens, very specific to use cases I have built and have linked all of them here. But this is a very simple example. Similarly, you can build a complex app which has got n number of links, multiple pages, and you can navigate between back and forth trying to bring in relevant information. So let me give you another example. So this is an example of a UI banker, a typical banking application, a demo banking application. So let me go ahead and show you a telco app. So again, a similar contact center scenario where you get to see information about the customer. So as you could see here, you might have information about the customer from different systems. So the robot runs in the background and pulls in information about the customer from various systems. You could see here that multiple processes are running in the background in my attended robot, and it brings in all the information to the agent. And once each job gets completed, you could see that the screen gets populated with the relevant set of information. So I've written the logic in such a way that once all the information loads, then remove the loading indicator. As you could see here, you have multiple tabs about each actions or information about the customer. What's the plan the customer is in, the callback number, so on and so forth. So as you could see, this is a UI or a visualization which is completely built using the UiPath Studio. You can apply your own organization theme. You can put a tab. You can have different controls, have table, icons for that matter. So I'll do a quick demo of how to build an app as well. But the idea is you have the ability to go ahead and build any application with any number of pages, with any scenarios attain to your needs. So in this case, you see you have a lot of information. Let's say the customer wants to add a new line. You click on add a new line. It opens up a different form where you collect different information about the customer, and then you go ahead and get those information entered into your system. For example, now let's go and look at the billing and payment, where the customer has some queries about the billing and payment. So as an agent, I go to the billing and payment. Here again, our system or the robot goes back and pulls in relevant information from, let's say, the billing system, the ERP, and shows that information to the agent. So we don't have to go to the process where the agent puts us into a call. Can you please hold us for 10 seconds or 15 seconds while I fetch that information? So that step where you are being put on hold, where the agent is running around trying to get you the right set of information by moving to different tabs, that's been eliminated by using a simple customized app where robot does the job for you and providing you in the format which you and your organization wants here. So as you could see here, you get the split up of the bill where the customer then clarifies all the information with the agent who is working with them. So these are some of the couple of examples. Let me show you one other example which I talked about, which is the companion app. So this is for one of our pilot which we did for one of the water companies, where they have their main contact center solution intact, but at the same time they work with different systems for different solutions, where they have to go and look at different proprietary systems to find out where the problem is. If there is a maintenance going on, they use geolocation to identify the problem of the customer, so on and so forth. So they wanted a mini app which they would like to sit on the side of a customer's the agent's desktop. So you can have a main CRM or a contact center application or any application of your choice, and then you have this beautiful side bar, or you would say it can be one on the left, it can be on the top, it can be smaller than this. So you name it, right? It's at the end of the day, it's how you define it. And from here, you go ahead and start writing or showing the right set of fields you want to show on your screen. Then from here, automation can kick in. So it not necessarily have to be a full-fledged app like the way I showed here in these two examples. It can be a very simple sidebar like this, or a top bar, or any bar for that matter, but it doesn't have to be your main app. It can be a companion app which pulls in information through automation to the agents or to the employees at the right time. So now, so now I've covered some of the demo aspects of what UiPath app different use cases are. So let me go ahead and start by building a very simple use case of taking 3 inputs and clicking on a button which starts a process. And once the process gets completed, it takes in to output, which I then show up back in the app. A very simple app, which helps you give an overview of what an app means and how does it interact with process and what are the various aspects of the App Studio. So let's start with creating a new app. So I click here on create new app on the top right. Let's say March 3 webinar. I call this app as my webinar demo. So you have the ability to create an app from scratch, or you have the ability to import an app. So whenever an app is created, you can download the file, or which can be given as a reference to another file. So you can start from scratch, or you can import from file. So in this case, I'm going to start from scratch. So I click on create. Then I land in the App Studio. And App Studio has got 3 main sections here. So one is the tree view, which shows you the list of all the controls, the pages, the processes, and the hierarchy they represent. And the central section is the canvas where the magic happens, or you would see what are the controls are used and how they are positioned with respect to the other controls. And then on the right side is what you have is the add pane and the properties pane. So every control has its own property, starting from the page to a control, like a container control, to a bunch of other controls, which I will show you. And they have, each one of them have a bunch of general properties. You have events, like any event, like click on or load, and then at a styling part of it, where you have the ability to go ahead and style them. And then you have the add control pane. We have a bunch of controls categorized under input, display, containers, and then icons. And as we go, you would see this control pane enriched with additional controls like file, tab, so on and so forth. And so let's get started with the very basics here. So I already have a container layout control by default add in my main page. So let me go ahead and increase the size of it, the container. Let me start by adding all the controls I need in one go. So I click on add control, then I keep the panel open. Then I pull in all the controls I need in one go to make the experience easy, because I'm very clear on what I wanted to demo. So I need an image control. Then I need a header. I have 3 inputs and 2 outputs. So I need labels for all of them. So I need 5 label controls. 1, 2, 3, 5. Then I need a button. When you click on it, I want the process to execute. So I add a button. Then I need text box to get in the input from the customer or the employee. So I add 3 text box to get the input, and 2 text box to show the output. So now I've added all the controls. I've closed the control pane. Let me go ahead and add the process I want. So I click on process. It opens up the orchestrator window, or the select orchestrator window. The ones you see on the left or the orchestrator which is available in cloud in this specific account app team. So for the purpose of this demo, I'm going to pick demo orchestrator. You also have the ability to connect to an on-premise orchestrator by providing the URL, tenant, username, and password. So I go here, I select the folder, and I select the process. So as soon as I select the process on the left, I can see the properties of the process. It takes 3 input and 2 output. Yes, straightforward process. So I have added that process here. So you could see it takes 3 input, cache in on US check, not on US check, and 2 outputs, which is here. So now I have added the process. I have added all the controls. So let me go ahead and configure these controls using the properties pane. So let me start with the image. So the image control has the ability to use an image in your local machine, or you also have the ability to point an URL, a web URL that can also render. And more importantly, an image control can also take an encoded image string, which is coming from a process argument to be displayed here. So if you want an image which has to be sent by a process, you can encode it and send it across as a string. The app can, and you can value bind it here. The app can decode it and start showing them in your runtime. So for the purpose of this case, I'm just adding it here. So I go to the style tab. I want to make some changes to it. So let me say I want it to be 150 pixel. No, it's too small. So let me make it 200. And I wanted it to be center aligned. So I have the ability to click on center and it comes center of the screen. So let's call this teller app. And let me go to the style. Again, I want to make it center. And let's say I want to give us header app. And let's say I want to make it the font color to be blue and bold. So now I can go about configuring the rest of the control. So let's go to general. I call it caching. Check. So let's call this button instead of button submit. And I want to use different colors. So there are default 5 styles available. If I want to further customize, I have the ability to do it here, but let me leave it the way it is. Then I go here and change this to account ID and transaction ID. Yeah. So now I have made the configure the different labels. Now let me configure the fields through the process which I've had. I have to bind the process inputs and the process outputs with the inputs and outputs shown on the screen. So I click on the first text box, which is cache in. I bind it with cache in. I double click it, it gets binded. You can also drag and drop this way. There are 2 ways you can interact with it. I find double click always easier. So 3 inputs, then account ID, I bind it with the out parameter, then transaction ID I bind. And I don't want users to interact with these 2. So I go ahead and disable this 2 text boxes. I can make it a label, but in this case, I just made it a text box and made it disabled. So now I want this app to get executed when I click on the button submit. So I click on the button submit. So you go to the events. There is an event called clicked on. And on this event, I go ahead and create a rule. The rule being when this button is clicked, start a process. So you have multiple rules. Let's quickly go through the rules once. You have an if then else. So you can write a simple if then else loop rule to do some valuations, to do some checks, and based on that, you want to perform an action. Open a page. In this example, I have 1 page. Let's say I have 5 or 6 pages. A click of a button or a link or a label can open another page. Then open URL if you want to access an external application. Let's say you want to access your web Outlook or you want to access your Salesforce system. You can configure it here where a click of a button can open a URL. Then close popover bottom sheet is you have the ability to go ahead and show a pop-up using the open page rule. And this rule is to just close the pop-up either as a pop-up or a bottom sheet. These are capabilities. Then show message is a toast notification which comes in your app, which you can configure. Show and hide spinner. This is a rule which I will use right now, so you get an understanding. Basically, this is to show When the process is loading, you don't want the user to interact with the screen, or you want to give a feedback to the user that indeed the screen is loading and the process is fetching its results. Then set value is a rule where you uh, want to set some values either to an app variable or to a process parameter or to a property. For example, you can use a if condition and saying, hey, if the value of this process output is more than 50, then set the value of the background color or the text color to red. So it can be the actual value or it can be any property associated with a particular control. And then of course the start process. This is the way through which we interact with automation. So in this case, I'm going to use the start process rule. What process to start? I've already added the process or reference that process in my app. So I'm going to add double UI. And then you have a bunch of properties associated. So run asynchronous is something which helps you to decide whether you want the rule to get executed one by one, or you want the rule to get executed as soon as this gets executed. If I set asynchronous, the second rule gets executed and so on. Whereas if I leave it off by default, once this rules get executed, if I add any additional rule, that gets executed after the first one. Then this is the place where you decide whether it is an attended or unattended. So one of the questions asked is, do you have the ability to connect to UiPath Assistant and Orchestrator? So if I know that the process is in my local robot and I want to use it in an attended fashion, I use it attended by default, which is the case. However, if the process is not available in my assistant and I want this process available in Orchestrator and I wanted to make it an unattended job where an unattended robot will pick it up, then you can go ahead and mark it here. So based on this, the app will decide whether you want to call the local assistant or it has to put a job into the orchestrator. Then input override, it helps you to override any of the values. I have the ability to go ahead and say, hey, you know what, input cache override value into say 200. I have the ability to do it. So in case if I don't want to collect a user input, but I always want to send a definite default value, I have the ability to do it. But in this case, I'm not doing it. Then when started. So when the process started, is there anything you want to show to the user? You can put a show message, or you want to perform any other operations in this in the app. So in this case, I'm going to do a simple thing, a show me a spinner. And in the spinner, show a label called robot in action. Then when state changes, it is used during an attended robot scenarios. I'm not configuring it, but I'm just going and saying when the process gets completed, hide the spinner. So I'm just removing the checkbox. So what happens is the process starts, it shows the spinner, and once the process completes, it removes the spinner. And if there are any errors, you can configure it for much more error handling scenarios. But in this case, I'm not doing it. So you could see here that you can write nested rules. So what I meant is when completed, show and hide a spinner, then I can say, hey, you know what, start another process. And I can also say, hey, set value for a particular app variable or a control. I'll talk what's app variable in a moment. So you have the ability to write nested rules based on your logics. So in this case, I'm keeping it simple. So it's just a simple start process with start spinner and show spinner and hide spinner. So now I have configured the app. So let's, as a user now I have built it, I want to preview it. So I click on preview at the top, which opens the preview part, and this is what I see. So let's just first try to run the app and see whether it works, and then I'll also explain some of the styling changes later. So I enter cache in as 100, on US check is 50, and non-US check is 25, and click on the button submit. So it shows the spinner, and you could see my robot is in action, and the process starts. And this opens up a sample UI screen where it enters all this 3 information and shows 2 outputs. As you see here, 100, 50, 25. You see these 2 information of account ID and transaction ID is being shown here. So this is a very simple aspect of what it means to build an app which takes input and output. Of course, this is a very simple app. As I showed you earlier, you can build complex apps with different sections in an app with many different screens, one navigating between each other. So I'll just explain some of the styling options here. So let's say I have I want to stretch all the elements here. So I've selected the container. I go here, I click on stretch. So the app, so you have multiple styling options available at a container level as well as at each control level, where you can go out and style the app in the way you want it. So in this case, if I click on preview, yeah, so the app slightly looks different from the older app where it looks a lot of white space. This looks much more center aligned. So the point here is you have the ability to go ahead and customize it the way you want. So now, so once the app is done and I'm happy with what I have done, let's say I want to make it public, I go ahead and click on publish, and the app gets published, which means it's available for everyone to consume. And how do I determine the permission? I determine it by using the permissions tab. So I have the ability to go and add users. So in this case, let's say I want to make my colleague Evan to be a co-owner. I can add him as a co-owner. But let's say I want to add one of my other colleague to just run the app. So I make Sunil as a person who can run the app. So you have the ability to add users at different levels, whether a co-author, which means they can go ahead and edit the app with you, they can co-author the app, or someone who has the ability only to run the app. And then you have history, which talks about all the versions you have published or made or publish it. I can make some changes and I can again publish it. So you'll have one more record here. And then the general pane, where you can change the name, descriptions, the icon, which is shown on the home page. You can also change the owner of an app. If I don't wish to be an owner, I can make someone else an owner, and then also have the ability to access the production URL. So let's say I can just share this URL with anyone in the organization who has access, let's say to Evan or Sunil. All I have to do is just copy this URL and share it with them, and they can log in to the cloud platform, and they can start using the app in this state. So that's about the permissions. And since UiPath app is a progressive web app, you can create shortcuts in your home screen. So this is what exactly I did here. So the UiPath sidebar app, let's say I have this app. I can go to more app tools. I can, sorry, not save page, create shortcut. Yeah. So the ability to create a shortcut, and this shortcut can open as a page. So it would create a icon in my desktop as well. So next time when I click on it, it opens up like an app. Though it's necessarily a web application, this is one way you can build shortcuts in your system. Okay, so that's with what I have to share for demo. Let me do one thing. Let me go back to the slides and talk about some of the other aspects of what I want to talk about, and then I'll switch on to the questions. Okay. So we are done with the demo. Yeah. So these are some of the useful links which I would like to share with you. We will share this at the end of the presentation as well. That we have some sample layouts which we have available. So you don't have to start from scratch. So you can go to this link and download a bunch of sample layouts, and you can start from there. And then I provided the links for app documentation, and also some of the specific links about to understand styling. I would say it's better that you read some of these so you better understand how to align different controls within a container. A container is nothing but something which holds a lot of controls together, and various aspects and other properties associated with it. So you get an or good understanding of what it means to build a complex app with different alignment and styling options. Then we have the feedback in forum where you can provide your feedback. And as I said earlier, apps academic course, I would strongly urge everyone to take this course to get a good understanding of what UiPath Apps also offer. And then apps forum. As you might all know, we have a separate section for apps where in forum where you can post your questions or bugs or feedback, which would be able to address and help you on blog in case if you're stuck somewhere. So now what's coming next? So now till now we have spoke about what is there and how do you go ahead and access apps. So what is coming next? So the first and the key thing we are currently working on is to improve the performance. So improve the performance from a design time, improve the performance from the runtime, improve the time it takes for the app to call the robot, improve the time it takes for to return the results and showing all the information. If you have a very simple app, it renders quickly. However, if you have a complex app with thousands and thousands of controls, how do you make sure it runs in a much more seamless and a faster manner? So that is something we are working on to enhance the performance. The second key thing is ability to make process results available across pages. So today, you see, when I showed a demo, I created a simple one page. I have a button. I clicked on a button. It ran a process, took some input, and showed input in the same page. But if I were to access the output of that process in a different page, I have to rerun the process, or I have to use app variables within App Studio and then pass the value to the other process. So this in a way is inefficient. So we are trying to make the process results available across the app. So we are trying to make it app scoped rather than page scope, so that the users do not have to run the same process again and again when they navigate between different pages. And the third one is moving apps between accounts. So I have created a good app. Now I want to share that app, let's say to a different account or with my friend. Today, you can obviously download the app and share it with your friend. They can upload it, but you have to do the bindings with the process once again, because the process ID is with which we connect app and the process within the orchestrator. So though you might get the UI, you would get all the information, the actual bindings with the process has to be rewired once again because it's going to connect to a different orchestrator. So that is something which we're working on, where how do we make it more seamless for end users to move app between one cloud account to another cloud account. And last but not least, in the very short term, is the expressions. So we're going to bring in a capability of Excel-like expressions where if you want to write equals string concatenation of, let's say, the first name and last name, where the process returns you first name in a separate field and second last name in a separate field, but you want to display it together. You have the ability, today you don't have the ability to do it. You either add two labels in the screen and show them separately, or you expect the process to send it as concatenate from the process side and send it to you, to the app. So we are going to bring in some manipulation operations, as well as some functions like date function, string function, math operations, so that the users can perform simple manipulations and uh, write simple rules within the app rather than entirely depending upon apps, the processes to do all the heavy lifting. So these are some of the things which is coming in a very short period of time. You can expect that to available in next 2-3 months. Then the next set of items we have is the app templates and entities integration. So I answered this question earlier that this is the next major focus in terms of integration, where we wanted to focus on entities directly, where you can interact and have entities as a database in the backend, and apps as a front end, where you want to build a full-fledged app. Even without interactive automation, you will be able to do it. Today, you have to deal with it in a roundabout way by using processes. Then app templates. I shared with you some of the app templates earlier, or I would say page templates, but we wanted to make it a very integrated experience that when I build an app, how do I have access to some of the good looking templates and pages so that I don't have to start from a blank slate every time. Because the target audience for us is business users and RPA developers who may not be as well as expert as a website builder or a UX designer. So we want to make that creation experience a lot more seamless. Then, as I mentioned earlier, apps is a cloud product. However, you have the ability to interact with on-premise. So we wanted to make sure that apps is also available as an on-premise offering. And in addition to it, the Active Directory and the group supports, which we have in Automation Cloud and Orchestrator to be available within an apps. And we are also working on improving additional controls, improving the functionalities by adding additional controls like file, charts, and tab control, and also in addition to input control validations. So this is what the various stages or the evolution of what's going to come in 2021 this year, so as to see how the app progresses. So we'll be happy to take any feedbacks through the links which I shared earlier, in terms of any use cases which you would like to share, or you want us to build this specific capability, or you feel that this functionality is something which is more and more important in your use cases. We'll be happy to look at. So that kind of comes to an end of the session. So I see a lot of questions in the chat. So I'm going to open the chat and start answering one by one. Meanwhile, we can open the forum for questions as well. And these are some of the questions which came in the registration form. So let me go through the questions in the chat. Then I'll answer some questions, and I'll go through some of the questions here in the slide as well. So let me go from, yeah. So I think I've answered till here, where can apps handle file as input to UiPath robots? As I said, there are two ways to do it. You can start an attended process which has select file activity, and then from there you can continue with the rest of the process. Or we have a roadmap item where you can bring a file control. For contact center, how apps can integrate with IFI or telephone systems like, if you go to a UiPath.com website, we have a contact center telephony integration example with Amazon Amazon Connect. There is a YouTube link as well as and the process of doing it. We can always verify it. You can have a look at it, and if there are any additional questions, I'll be happy to take that on later. Then UiPath have any database? Yes, so that's our UiPath data service, aka entities. And today you have the ability to interact with processes, but eventually we'll have a first party integration directly from apps to the UiPath data service. In a way, yeah, it's a database. How to configure UiPath apps to connect to orchestrator and not to assistant? I think I answered it earlier during the demo, where you make it as unattended. It goes as a job to the orchestrator and does not connect to the local robot available in your machine. Is there any UI activity UiPath can talk to SAP database? Yes, there are activities. I would suggest you to look at activities.uipath.com, the documentation which lists down all the activities, as well as UiPath Marketplace, which has got some of the frameworks which might help you in with interacting with SAP. Is there an option to integrate apps with on-prem orchestrator? Yes, you have the ability to do it. So that's what I showed it in the screen, that you have the ability to connect to cloud or to the on-prem orchestrator. So there are two options provided. Can these apps be hosted on custom domain? Today, apps is a service provided only by UiPath, like the way we provide Automation Cloud as a service. So once we provide the on-prem, you can host it in any place you want in your own servers. Then what are the recommendations for the processes robots set up to get data back on apps as quickly as possible? Dedicated environment for apps with unattended robots. This is especially important for agents being on the call with customers. Yes. So in any scenarios where there is immediate need to get the information as early as possible, as quickly as possible, uh, the best thing to do, or our recommendation, is to use attended robot. Because unattended robot, there is literally no deterministic way for you to say if there is another job running, then or if someone is simultaneously accessing your job, is it's going to be in the queue or it's going to be in the waiting state. So you have no way to know when you're going to get the result. So our general recommendation is to use attended robots in such cases. And another recommendation is to split the processes and the screens in a way that you don't have one process which pulls in data from all the systems and it takes 10 minutes, whereas you have different sections on the screen which progressive loads and pulls in relevant information so that an agent can start interacting with the customer in a meaningful way rather than waiting for all the information to load it at one point in time. So, and thirdly, from as I mentioned in the roadmap, so we are working from our end as well to improve the performance, specifically whether it is apps interacting with robots or how apps render its controls on the pages. So we are improving the performance from our end as well. So my recommendation in this place would be to use attended robots and split the process and make the turnaround time of the process as fast as possible, and light up as early as possible in different sections of the screen so that the agent can work with the customers. Is there a limit to how many processes you can add to the particular app? There are no limits to the processes as of now. Can app launch an attended process in pip mode? Yes, it can. So this is nothing to do with an app. App is just going to send an execution command to your attended robot. And in your attended robot, you have the ability to configure a process saying, hey, start in pip mode. For people who don't know pip, it's picture in picture. It opens up a different a screen for you, and so that you, and it continues its automation in that specific version rather than hindering with any of your behavior in an existing desktop. Yes, you can do it, and that is something you configure in the process. Can we store data entered on the apps by a user on a queue? As of now, we do not have the ability to put items into the queue. You have the ability to start a job in an unattended fashion, but this is an item which we have in our roadmap where you have the ability to add items to UiPath queues as well. How does UiPath app licenses work? That's a good question. So today, UiPath apps does not have any specific SKU. It's available with the lowest SKU, which is available in the cloud, which is Action Center. So you generally pay $440 for Action Center, which is the lowest SKU. And we have apps bundled with starting from the lowest SKU. So apps is available across all the SKUs, but this is available only in cloud. So if, let's say, if you want, if you have 10 attended robots, 10 attended users using automation cloud, and they want to use apps, it's basically free for them because you already have that attended robot, let's say in cloud, and apps license is bundled with it. However, if let's say if you are an on-premise user and you already have 10 attended robots, you have to buy app licenses. And how do you do that is you buy the app licenses, the cheapest of the app licenses, which is the Action Center cloud licenses, so that you can start using apps. I can share more information about this, maybe post this, but this is the nutshell. Apps does not have a separate licensing. It's a SKU which is available with the existing bundles. So if you are in cloud already, this is available with all the SKUs. So basically, you pay. You don't have to pay anything, and for community users, it's basically free. Is it possible for multiple developers to work on the same app at the same time? So this is today you have this capability, but I would not recommend doing it because there are we are working on improving the collaboration experiences better. So the short answer to it is no. It's better though. Multiple users can open it at the same time. You can also see the other person has opened it. My recommendation is not to do multiple developers to work on the same app at the same time. We are working on improving the whole collaboration feature as we speak. Can we make Dynamic pages? No, we cannot make dynamic pages. Pages and the controls within them has to be static. However, you have the ability to hide and show information. So for example, you have 100 fields. You have the ability to say that, hey, based on this logic, I want to see, or I want the customer or the agent or the employee or the user to see only this 10 information, 10 fields. You have the ability to write logic to hide and show fields and containers and sections based on your logic. Is it possible to add HTML iframe into app application? No, we do not have the control now, but this is one of the very frequently asked capability where we want the ability to embed something within app. However, the vice versa is possible. You have the ability to embed an app into any of your other website pages into an iframe. However, this is something which we will prioritize as a capability. Do all users need to have UiPath robot installed on their own computer, or is there an option for them to initiate automations to the cloud only? So having robot in your system is not a mandatory thing if the app users in your organizations are going to use unattended robots. Or if you're going to use a mobile phone, if you're going to access UiPath apps using mobile phone, you can't have robots in your Android or iOS mobiles. So it's not a mandatory one as long as you are not relying on an attended robot to run and fetch information. You can always do that using unattended robots. Yeah, okay. Okay, would like to understand how the data integrity is maintained so the app runs from cloud. So yeah, that's a very good question. So if you look beneath the layers, what app basically does is app provides you a visualization layer, and it shows your visualization layer. You enter some information, you click on a button, it starts a process in your local robot or in unattended fashion, right? So what happens is in your local robot, that information is never going to the cloud from your browser. The information is passed on to your robot. The robot runs with the input which you have provided and shows the output. And when you when you close the browser or when you move on the other process, that information is completely lost. We are not actually storing any information in the cloud with respect to your transactions or with respect to app runs. The only information which is stored in the cloud is the definition of the app, which is what is the process, what are the parameters, and what is the controls used, what is the size of the control, so on and so forth. Anything which is related to app definition, which is app metadata, that is what is stored in the cloud. Any data associated with your runtime of the app is not stored in our app at all, because either it is run in your local machine using attended, or we are going to start a job in unattended fashion to the orchestrator, which is going to pass to the internet, which we are encrypting using HTTPS. So these are the two main ways. App service as such does not store any information. How to debug or find out the error, if any, with respect to UI and apps? So that's a good question. So let me quickly show you one of the capability we have. So we have introduced a capability for showing errors. So today, let me quickly. So in this case, say I have a process. Let me go ahead and delete the process I've used. All these bindings have become invalid because this process does not exist, which means this binding does not make any sense, including one on the button. So we have this ability, as soon as the app detects there is an error, it's going to show you on the tree view. And when I click on it, it's going to take you to that specific place where the error is. And let's say here it clearly says that the error is in the events. So when I click on it, even takes me to the which error in the right location. So this way, you don't have to guess. If your app doesn't work, you don't have to guess where the error is. We have provided a tree view through which you can find out where the error is and quickly solve that error. So as soon as I remove this, you could see that the error is removed. Similarly, you can do it for other controls as well. Yeah. So this reflects on it. So with respect to debugging, we don't have any debugging capabilities right now. But the good thing with the apps is since you have a preview capability, you can preview it as many number of times to see whether it's working as per you expected, whether the data, whether the process is returning results. But debug is not something which you're planning for right now. However, we believe this error with preview function should be able to help you solve most of your problems. Okay, then the next question. UiPath connects with orchestrator through webhooks or some other way? Yes, it connects to orchestrator through webhooks. May I know how we can access? Okay, Vibor can answer this question, that how we can access this recording for later. I think Vibor will send a link to you through email. Can these apps be used with legacy systems? As I said earlier, apps is just a visualization layer where you build build your web pages, or you would say apps, using drag and drop, and then you're going to run by clicking on preview. All the connections with your legacy systems is going to happen through robot. Apps directly does not interact with any system. Apps interacts with robots, which in turn interacts with the legacy system based upon your process, based upon your logics and process. Are we able to show process states like successful through UiPath app? We have the ability to show some states, and we also have the ability to show errors. For example, in an attended scenario, if I have a process, I have the ability to show the status, like what is the, let me quickly show that to you. So let me go to the demo. WI. So go to the summit. So I have this process status field, which I can use to show the status. However, this is used only during attended scenarios. When there is an error, you can show the error as well on the screen. Can we ship the app to intranet? So if you have the page loaded, and if you have attended automation, yes, because the page is going to interact with it. But since the app is entirely going to be available in the cloud service, because you need to have this URL to access the app, at the moment, it is not possible. Once we have it on-prem, yes. Why is UiPath Apps, instead of creating your own app and connect it with the orchestrator API? Absolutely, yes. Till now, a lot of customers were doing it, where they build their own HTML web pages or applications and then connect with the orchestrator API. However, the effort involved in building that is huge, and you need a dedicated developer to go ahead and do that. Whereas, and it's also high maintenance. However, this provides you a simple low code, no code way of dragging and dropping and building applications, and ability to connect to processes and entities and other capabilities which is going to come in the future. And this will be also made, like if it's in cloud, it's we ensure that we provide you all the benefits of what a cloud service has to offer. So these are some of the things which helps you to do, or which helps with UiPath offers, which may not be offered by your own app. Of course, there is nothing stopping you from creating your own app and connecting it through API. Is it planned to connect apps directly to AI Center? We have, as a first step, we are going to connect with the entities. And in our medium-term plan, we have the plan to connect to Action Center. And as of now, we don't have app plans to connect to AI Center, but I would love to hear more from you about your use cases, about why you think this is something which you're interested or looking for. So I think I've answered this. If internet connection is fluctuating and I'm using apps from mobile, this will impact the outcome. I don't think so, right? So see, at the end of the day, the app is going to load. It's going to take some time to load if the connection is fluctuating. Then it's going to, when you click on start process, it's going to send a job. It's going to be slow for sure, as you rightly. It's like typically any other website, but I don't think it's going to impact the outcome of your process. Okay. So I think I've answered all the questions here. So let me quickly go to some of the key questions. So how to create good layouts? I think I mentioned earlier. So we have a link which gives you access to some of the templates. However, we are also having a feature in the roadmap where we provide you a bunch of templates where you can go ahead and start using it. Then how to connect with the API and robots. I just showed you how to do it with robots. So today, any connection to any system or through API or to any other external systems happens through robot. An app is used as a visualization layer. In long term, we have plans to directly connect with APIs, but at the moment, and even in the short term and the medium term, the only way you interact with data is through robots or through entity service. Benefits of apps and how to use, we talked about it. How to integrate chatbot within app. This is a very similar question to the iframe question which was asked earlier. This is one of the features which we are actively looking on, since we have a lot of requests from different sections of people. UiPath app in my system, but robot in a different system. Yes, this is where unattended robot fashion happens. That's how it works. Is UiPath apps like Power Apps? Yes and no. Yes, in the way that it's a low-code app development platform where it's a simple visual drag and drop, and you can build multiple screens and navigations and whatnot. However, UiPath app is mainly focused on, and our value proposition is all around automation. How do you provide visualization or meaningful visualizations for automation? So that's where UiPath apps is when compared to Power Apps. Use cases, I think we talked about it. Should we know other languages to develop apps? I mean, we don't have to, because as you see in the demo, it is just a drag and drop tool. You don't have to know any languages. Why should I use UiPath apps instead of processes in UiPath Studio? I think UiPath, I answered it earlier, but let me go on. The UiPath Studio is mainly used to build processes. UiPath apps is to build visualization, as I just showed you, and you embed or you reference the processes which you build in UiPath Studio in UiPath apps. And UiPath apps is, you can consider this as a visualization layer. A close comparison of UiPath apps to the existing product may be forms within processes, but forms has its own set of limitations that they reside within the apps. They reside within the process. It's mainly used in the scenario of attended automation and ability to connect. And apps provide a lot more flexibility in terms of multiple pages, different set of controls, connecting to many processes, attended and unattended, and so forth.
So Venkit, can we take some question? People can unmute and take
Yeah, sure.
ask any question.
Yeah.
Guys, you can now unmute and ask any question if it's not answered yet.
So, yeah.
Hi, Venkata. First of all, I think a really good webinar. Really. So thanks for that. And the question from my side is like, can you elaborate more on the integration with IVR and telephony?
Yeah. So UiPath as of now does not provide any direct integrations with them. However, as I mentioned earlier, we have integrations done through Amazon Connect, and the details of that is provided in the website. I would recommend you to look into it. And if there are any further questions, I can happy to connect you with the relevant person who has worked on it, so that he can give you more clarity on how do you go ahead and do the integration with other IVS systems.
That would be super helpful, if possible.
Sure. Yeah, I will definitely. So you can reach out to me or to Vibor, and I'll point you to the right person and the relevant documentation and links with the existing demo.
Thank you very much. And when there is lots of features which will come with the roadmap for this year, is it any more like specific timelines? How the release pipeline works here?
Yeah, so since we are a cloud product, we do a fortnightly release. Right? So every 2 weeks we release. It can be bug fixes, feature enhancements, or new capabilities. So we don't stick to any distinct timeline like 21 dot, let's say for 4 or 10, like the usual on-prem cycle. So these features starts coming in every 2 weeks. My suggestion is we have uipath.com/release notes where you have the ability to go ahead and subscribe to various products, and one of them being apps, so that you get notified about what was the new release which happened and what are the things which is available as part of the new release.
Okay, thank you for the answer.
Is there already some apps examples available provided by UiPath? We have some examples which we mainly use for demo, but we have not shared it across, but we have definitely some use cases, and we have more use cases to come, which we will be updating. Our product marketing team is working on updating it either as customer references or use cases. So the more information is to come. I will share that information. We will be definitely sharing that information in forum, or it will be available in uipath.com/apps page. But we will share with you once we have more content. Can we expect new features which we talked about? Sample app layout file does not upload an apps, error is being displayed. Okay, let me have a look at it and I'll get back to you. Okay, release notes is being shared. Perfect. Are there any other questions which I can help answer?
Hi, Venkat. Thank you for this amazing session. So I do not have a question, but I am interested in looking UiPath app as a standalone UiPath app studio, like we have UiPath Studio to build our processes. It would be wonderful. So suppose somebody is not with certain organization, there are certain kind of limits that you can avail only certain aspects of the orchestrator. So if we have UiPath Studio, UiPath App Studio as a standalone application, it would be much nicer. Don't you think so?
So two things to it. Today, specifically with UiPath apps, there is literally no restriction in terms of what a community user can do and what an enterprise user can do. So as you know that community accounts are free, you can go ahead and create based on your email ID, and you can literally use every capability which enterprise has to offer. And as a matter of fact, over a period of time, community will get those updates and functionalities a lot faster. That's number one. And the other thing is you also have the ability to import apps. So you can always build a, let's say, in a community account, and then you can upload it into your different account or an enterprise for that matter. That's number one. And number two, having a separate installable. Yeah, that's what I mentioned by apps on-prem. So we have that working on the go, where the ability for the users to go ahead and have both the runtime and the design time available on-prem. So the team is currently working on it. We are working on the designs, because this is one of the consistent asks for us from our customers, that it's great that it's in cloud, but we would like to use an on-premise part of it. So once we have an answer for it, I think it should answer your question as well. Like, how are we going to deliver on-prem, and how can you access app service from that, the studio?
Thank you.
We have 4 more minutes, so in case you have any other question. Any question, any feedback, any suggestion? Yeah. You can share that as well.
Yeah, sure. Any feedback as well, like is there anything which you really want apps to have and we don't have it? Since I'm from the product team, I'll be more happy to listen to you guys. And we also have other members from the team here on the call. We'll love to hear some of your initial feedbacks. What do you think we can improve? Yeah, upload files is on the way. And I see here the question, it's very difficult to get InfoSec clearance for any cloud platform. So if this can be given on-prem, it will be helpful. Loud and clear, Satish. This has been one of the most important asks for us as well, and our team is looking on making it happen. Currently integrating apps with G Suite for the same to upload files. Okay, got it. Yeah.
So it looks like we have covered all the question and nothing more. So I think it's good to wrap up.
Just want to say it's
yeah.
very good and informative session. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you, everyone. We really appreciated joining this session. And please do check out our upcoming virtual session, on the community page. And yeah, and I've shared the link for the recording. And in case you have any other question, you can always reach out to me or my colleagues. And yeah, see you again in the next session. Thanks, Venkat. Thank you so much for the great session.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. And thank you so much for being a great audience. And any questions, reach out through forum or through Vibor, and we will ensure that we hear you and address all your queries and feedback and concerns.